back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Kyla, and in this video I'm going to give you 10 recommendations if you're looking to get into fantasy. I myself am still so new to the fantasy genre, so I feel like this is the perfect video. This is the video that I would have wanted like a year ago when I was looking to get into it but didn't really know where to turn. I have some cult favorites in here, so you'll see some that are talked about a lot, but for good reason. And then I also included some that I don't see talk about a lot that I personally loved and I think would be perfect for someone who is looking to get into fantasy. I also included standalones and just a few ones that were part of a series, because I know that when you're first looking to get into fantasy, the daunting thing of it is that like so many of them are included in series and you're like, I don't want to take on a series. So the majority of them are standalone, but I did include a few that are part of a series, but I think are perfect for beginners because, well, we'll get there, but I did include a few. I think that's it, so let's just go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start with the standalones, and the first one you have probably seen me talk about a bunch of times, but also other people talk about a bunch of times, but it has to be included on this list, and that is House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This was one of my first kind of nods into fantasy, and it was the perfect stepping stone because not only is it fantastical, but it's also so cozy and so heartwarming. It has a found family. This follows Linus Baker, who is one of my favorite characters of all time. I love him and I love his character arc so much. Linus is a caseworker for magical youth, so he goes around to different places to make sure that kids with magical abilities are being treated and cared for in the right way. Like, softest heart ever. And one day Linus is assigned this kind of super secretive mission, shall we say, to go to this orphanage, the House in the Cerulean Sea, and make sure that everything that is happening there is copacetic, to make sure the kids are being cared for and that the caretaker, Arthur, is doing his job. And oh my god, this book goes in like such a funny direction, but such a heartwarming direction. The magic in it is so cute. You really get to like know these characters, and all of the kids at the school each have their own little like personality. And there's also just like this air of mystery happening throughout this book, where like you don't really know a whole ton about Arthur and also like the kids at the school, and you're just kind of like unraveling their stories as they go along. So if you're a fan of mysteries, I think that this one is a perfect place to start. But also if you just love like a good heartwarming story, this one is absolutely perfect. There's also a lot of queer representation in this book and a lot of talk around LGBTQ+, and also just being yourself and staying true to like your authentic self. This book made me cry at the end. It lives up to the hype. Trust me, like this is an incredible place to start. Really, any TJ Klune, like you cannot go wrong. I also love Under the Whispering Door by him. He has a new one coming out soon that I cannot wait to read. So really, like he is such an incredible like beginner fantasy author, but oh my god, this one, perfect place to start. And while I'm on the cult classic, let's just like get them out of the way so we can talk about the ones that maybe like you haven't heard of before or aren't talked about as much. And this is one of my favorite books of all time, if not still my favorite book of all time. And that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. Schwab. I mean, are we surprised? Absolutely not. I don't think we are. This is so many people's favorite book for a reason. It's incredible. It's so good. It's so good. And I know that there are a lot of people who aren't a fan of fantasy who have read this and like loved it, because it doesn't really feel like a fantasy while you're reading it. Like some of these, you know it's a fantasy, and some of them just feel like a good story and you're so engulfed in what's happening that doesn't really feel like a fantasy or like what you typically would think when you think of a fantasy. And this is the perfect example of this. And if you don't know, in this book we are following Addie, and Addie is just like on the straight path to the predictable kind of future for herself. You know, this book takes place in the early 1700s, early 1700s. So like, you know, women are just made to be housewives at that point. You know, you get married, you have a certain suitor that your like family is after, you get married, you make a home, you have babies, you do all of the thing. But Addie doesn't want that. She's like, I have been in this small town that I live in. I know there's so much world to see. I want to see the world. I want to get out. I want to travel, but like I'm stuck and I don't know how to do that. So one night, in a desperate flee from her life, she makes a deal with the devil. You know what? She's gonna live forever. She gets to go wherever she would like to go, but anyone who meets her is going to forget her. No one is gonna remember who she is. And that just like in itself is like, at the time seems like such a good idea, right? Like, oh my god, I get to go wherever I want to. No one's gonna remember who I am, so I can get into as much mischief and whatever as I want to, and that's great. But also, like, not really remembering that, like, human connection is a thing. And so Addie goes out, she makes this deal and realizes, you know, down the road that maybe she may have made a mistake. Because one day she meets Henry, and Henry remembers who she is, and it is just, it gets you in all the feels. It just really reminds you of how important human connection is, and how important relationships are, and how much, you know, you can try to seek out a certain external thing, but really like who you are at your core and who you have in your life is like the most important thing. This story has it all, you guys. It's incredible. If you haven't read this, like, please do so. Please do so. Like I said, it doesn't feel over the top fantasy. The vibes and the aesthetic in this story are so good, and also the relationship that she has with the devil is like next level. So intriguing, so interesting, and goes in a direction that you wouldn't really expect, and it has everything. I could talk about this book forever. I'm gonna shut up now. Read this. Read it. Okay, my next one on this list, I do not see hardly anyone talk about, and I loved this book. And maybe this is just because it has like a niche kind of audience. I don't know, but I'm going to talk about it because I feel like it needs space in the book community, because it is just so fun, and also I felt so seen while reading this book, and it is Sourdough by Robin Sloan. This book is like a bread lover's dream, first of all. I mean, hi, it's called Sourdough, and it has a little loaf on the cover, and it's just perfect, okay? But this book also includes the perfect conversation around hustle culture and this kind of go mentality that we are all kind of stuck in right now, or that social media kind of influences us to be. Like, hustle culture is very much still a thing, even though you do see a lot of people slowing down. And in this book, we are following Lois, who is at a job where everything is just go. It's a very kind of like scientific job, but like the workload just keeps like piling onto her. And at the end of the day, she is just like burnout to the max. And she goes home one day and finds a takeout menu and is like, you know what, I'm gonna order me some takeout. I don't even have the energy to cook right now. Like, it just is, you know, we all have those days. And she orders this takeout from this restaurant, and it has the most delicious sourdough she's ever had. And she proceeds to order this takeout every single day until one day she gets news that this little takeout place is closing down and they're moving away to fulfill some dreams in their home country, but not without leaving her the sourdough starter. And they're like, you know what, Lois? You love our bread so much that this is not sounding interesting, but I promise you it is. They're like, we're gonna leave you our sourdough starter. I feel like you love our bread so much that, like, you need it. And turns out there's a bit of a fantastical element to this sourdough starter. And Lois just finds herself going on this kind of path to feed this sourdough starter and create just kind of a slower side of life. And it's amazingly done. Like I said, the conversation from hustle culture to slowing down and integrating that with, like, having bread be the theme is just incredible, and it warmed my heart. And again, I just felt so seen during this book. I just kept nodding and being like, yep, I've been there, I felt that, I have felt that, and like, I want to slow down. And everyone in the world right now, throughout everything that we've gone through, I feel like so many people have turned to making bread, having these things that make them slow down. And this book is just like perfectly encapsulates that, while also having like a fun, fantastical element to it. It also really reminds me, this is like such a niche thing, and I don't know if I'm the only one that read this book as a kid, but this, like, the whole vibes of it and what ends up happening remind me of Stregonona. If you know, you know. If you have not read this children's book, it is so good. It's about pasta that takes over the town. Can you tell I like carbs? So yeah, it's about pasta that takes over the town. If that's a hint of what happens in this book, it is a hint, and it's just so fun. And also, like I said, I just love the conversation around it. So yeah, I mean, if you are like sucked into hustle culture and you're looking to read a fantasy that'll like help you slow down your life, please start here. Okay, let's move on to a book that I truly love. I also feel like I need to reread at some point because it's been a while, but I had the most fun while reading this book, and that is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This, again, was one of the first fantasy books that I kind of got into, and I loved it because there's a bit of a mystery element that's going on throughout this book, and it also has like incredible female vibes, like women empowerment to the max, which we love to see. So I just feel like people that are really like into thrillers and mysteries will really enjoy this one. And in this book we have two timelines. We have a timeline in the 18th century where this apothecary was very much like booming and known for maybe having some tinctures that could help a rotten husband, shall we say. This woman who runs the apothecary, Nella, I believe is her name. Yeah, Nella is known for creating and crafting different things that can help a scorned lover. Or, you know, someone who's maybe being abused or what have you. Okay, that's kind of the vibes of this apothecary. And then we have our second timeline, which is current day, of Caroline, whose husband has cheated on her, and she goes off on this adventure and then finds this lost apothecary and proceeds to like try to unravel what was happening back in the day through like old newspapers and stuff like that. It's just so fun, and I love a dual timeline. It's very easy to follow. You're not getting lost in so many different characters, and each timeline has their kind of own mystery going on throughout it. You know, we have the 18th century timeline where like maybe some things start happening where like people are looking at the apothecary kind of funny because all of these guys keep dying. And then we have the current day timeline where she's trying to figure out like what happened at this apothecary and, you know, discovering that it had this kind of reputation. It's so fun. And like I said, the women empowerment in this book is like, yes, here for it. And it's just a good time. We also have those like real and raw kind of real life moments of Caroline as she's kind of navigating, finding out that her husband cheated on her and going through those feelings of grief and processing like what her life is going to be like afterwards. I just had the best time. I love Sarah Penner's writing. Like I said, I love a dual timeline. It was just a great time. I cannot wait for her new one that just came out. And I like this cover. This cover is literally perfection. I loved it and I would highly recommend it. Next, we have an author that like spans all genres, which I feel is just like an indicator that, you know what, if you like them in this genre, you know, she writes some horror, she's done some kind of thrillery books, and then also has done fantasy. And like, you know, an author that can do both, I feel like if you're coming from one world, will probably enjoy the writing in this new fantasy world. And I read this one recently and absolutely loved it, and that is Nettle Bone by T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher can do no wrong, in my opinion, at least from what I've read so far. So good. But this one is one of my absolute favorites. It's shorter. It's I wouldn't say it's a novella because it is a little bit over 200 pages, but it's short, okay? So for people who are getting into fantasy, one of the most like intimidating things is how long fantasy books can be. The ones that I've mentioned so far are all fairly on the shorter side, except for Addie LaRue. Addie LaRue is a little bit longer, but this one's short. 200 pages. You can't go wrong. And it goes by so fast. In this book, we are following Mara, and Mara's sister is married to the king, and she is just being made to bore baby after baby after baby after baby. She is basically like being bred, and it's heartbreaking and it's abusive, of course, and she's not being treated correctly. So Mara sets out on this mission. She's like, I'm going to save my sister, and the only way that I can do that is if she completes 3 impossible tasks. The first one is, I'm gonna butcher this if I don't read it, build a dog of bones, sew a cloak of nettles, and capture moonlight in a jar. So she sets off on this adventure to go find this witch who can kind of help her navigate this, and along the way they pick up some other characters, and this is very much a story of found family, but it's also hilarious. It's so funny watching her kind of go through these tasks and realize like this great witch, she's a little bit cray-cray, but like she's smart and she's gonna make sure we do this thing, and like the way she goes about it, and Mara's just like in the background like, what in the world did I get myself into? And then also along the way, like I said, we have these other characters that come into play and they help Mara out, and it's so adorable, so funny, so dark. It gets very dark. It also gets a little bit like gruesome and gory at times too. You can totally tell it's like T. Kingfisher to a T, and I just had a great time. It's a little bit like fairy tale-esque, but it's so much darker than that, but also lighthearted at the same time, and the adventure that they go on and just the things that happen along the way are so fun. You're also kind of rolling your eyes a little bit, and then the ending, the way this ends, I loved it. They have that little bit of like anticipation. It makes your heart flutter a little bit. So people who really enjoy that like feeling of anxiety when you're reading a book, I think would really enjoy this one. And I just had a great time. And again, T. Kingfisher's writing is chef's kiss, so amazing, so descriptive, but without being like overly flowery or anything. It's incredible. I love this book if you couldn't tell, so I would highly recommend it. And then my last standalone is very much similar to Addie LaRue, and I gushed about this book in a recent vlog, and I've gotten a few of my friends to read it since then, and they have since loved it too, which just makes my heart so happy. You know, when you just recommend a book and you're not really sure how it's gonna go over, because, you know, comparing it to Addie LaRue is quite the bold statement, And when it lives up to the hype, it just like, and it wasn't just me, it made me feel so good. Anyways, it's Belladonna by Adeline Grace. Technically, this is part of a series, but the second one hasn't come out yet, so I'm calling this a standalone for the time being. The next one comes out in August, so if it's something that you do enjoy, you have something to look forward to. And I love this one because it has everything that you could possibly want in a book coming from other genres. I think this is an incredible place to start for people who are looking to get into fantasy, because we have a bit of a ghost story happening. We have death as a character, which is so cool, like very similar to Addie LaRue, where we had devil as a character. In this one, we have death himself, but there's also a bit of a ghost story happening. It also does get a little bit like gory at times, so people who really like horror and thrillers, I think will enjoy it. There's very much a mystery. There's actually quite a few mysteries happening in this book, so if you are a fan of mysteries, you have that. And then we also have a bit of a fantastical element to it. I mean, obviously we have death as a character, that's a bit fantasy in itself, but there are some other things in here woven in, and some talk about plants and that kind of thing, and just makes it overall like very fantasy vibes without being like overly fantasy. This is another one of those books where while you're reading it, it doesn't feel overly fantasy. It just feels like you're reading a fun story, and I just think that's the perfect kind of book when you're looking to get into this world. So in this book we are following Signa, and Signa's parents passed away when she was extremely young, but left her with quite a lofty inheritance. So if you are a fan of the inheritance games or any sort of like books like this, kind of similar, so she's been left this. She doesn't get the inheritance until she's 18, so until then, you know, she's orphaned, so she's being bounced around to different relatives' house, and while she's staying with each of these relatives, something just strange keeps happening. She can't really explain it, and she's not necessarily being treated the best at each one of these houses. They're all kind of after her own money, and after, you know, only taking her in because of the money. And when her aunt passes away, she goes to the next relative's house, and she realizes just some things aren't necessarily going the way that she was expecting them to. She might be seeing some ghosts, death might be coming to visit her more, but also Signa just like really wants a normal life. You know, she's nearing 18, like she just wants to settle down. She's tired of being bounced and tossed around. Like she just wants to be integrated into normal world, normal society, you know, maybe find a suitor of sorts. This book is very much like Bridgerton vibes in that sense of like going and like having coming out parties and, you know, finding someone to court you and all of those things. And it's just so incredibly done. Like I said, got everything you could ever possibly imagine. It has an inheritance story, it's got mystery, it has ghosts, it has death, it has a good story about figuring out who you are and what you want out of life. I just love it. And yes, I still stand by my statement that if you are a fan of Addie LaRue, you will enjoy this book. I loved it. I cannot wait for the second one. But like I said, it hasn't come out yet. So like, I'm still considering this a standalone, but truly, I would highly, highly, highly recommend this. Okay, we have 4 books left, and all of these are part of a series. But I think that they're very digestible series for people who are just getting into fantasy. The first one, you know, I'm just going to talk about it and get it out of the way because, yes, I am that person. Okay, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This whole series, it's so good. It's so good. I loved it. I loved it. I wasn't sure if I was going to. You know, you hear some things and I was like, this just is a little intimidating. Like, this one's on the shorter side, but some of the other books are like 800 pages plus, which is very intimidating when you're just getting into fantasy. But they read so freaking fast. It is ridiculous. Like, you can fly through these books like nothing you've ever read before, okay? They are straight addictive. At no point do you feel like, oh my god, this is so boring. Oh my god, this is such a lull in the story. Like, it's just a page turner from the very beginning. And these books contain everything that you would enjoy or that you would kind of expect in a fantasy series. So of course we have a love story that happens. Of course we do. Of course we do. But we also have war. We have a mystery kind of unfolding. We also have other worlds we're exploring. We have a whole cast of characters that is just superior. Okay? They're just superior and I love them. And then we also have this like overarching, you know, kind of family arc going on. And it's just so good. So if you don't know, which I'm sure you do, but if you do not, at least in this one, from what I can tell you, is we are following our main character, Feyre, and she kind of provides for her family. She's the youngest of 3 siblings, but she's the sole provider after her mother has passed away and her dad is a bit crippled. And she goes out hunting and comes across a wolf, and she's like toying with it, like, do I kill this? I'm not sure, because, you know, there's also Fae involved, and Fae can shapeshift and they can turn, so, you know, could this be Fae? But, like, she has to risk it because she needs to take care of her family, so she ends up killing this wolf. Turns out, just a wolf. Brings it back to her house, or so she thinks, and, one of the Fae shows up and is like, yo, you killed one of us. Deal is, I either kill you here on site or you come and live with me. And she doesn't want her family to die. She, you know, is the sole provider of her family. And she's like, I don't want you to kill my family and I don't want to die, so sure, I'll go with you. Very vague, but like I said, there is war that happens throughout these books. There's love triangles and love all around. Also a bit smutty, if you enjoy that. We have found family in here. We have everything that you could want in a fantasy series in this one, and it's just done so well. Sarah J. Maas's writing is so good. It's just so easy to follow. You're not getting confused on the different worlds. The worlds are set up in a way that is very easy to understand. You know, you have spring court, autumn court, winter court. You have this overall world in Prithian, and it's just so easy to understand. She also gives you a map on the inside in case you do get a little bit confused on where people are. And then you just have this like overarching kind of darkness to it and overall mystery happening throughout it as well. And it's just so incredibly well done. And anyone who has not gotten into fantasy, who has read these, is like, yeah, I can do fantasy. I can do fantasy. And I guarantee you, you will love it. You will fall in love with some of the characters. You will hate some of the characters. It's a roller coaster, and it should be. And I just think it's a great place to start. Next, we have one that is also incredibly easy to digest. And I don't know if this is just a duology or if there is going to be more, but it is The Witch Haven by Sasha Payton Smith. This one is just so fun. It's a good witch story. It is perfect for the fall. Highly recommend reading it that time of year. I mean, of course, it's called The Witch Haven, it's just so good. It's so good. So in this book, we are following Frances, and Frances, takes place in like the early 1900s. Frances is a seamstress, and one night when she is working late trying to get this project done for a very persistent client, shall we say, a man comes in and starts trying to take advantage of her, and then all of a sudden she wakes up and her scissors that she uses as a seamstress are in his neck. And she's like, I don't know how that happened. Do not know. But, you know, she can't get away with it. So she gets collected and sent away to this sanitarium, which actually turns out to be a school for witches. And it's just a good time, okay? It very much reminds me of like the worst witch. It also reminds me of just so many fun witch stories as a kid, and I just had a great time. You know, the witch school vibes, the vibes in this, the aesthetic in this is impeccably done in my opinion, and we're following Frances as she's trying to like learn to use her magic, and it just reminds me a bit of like Charmed and the whole like magic school in that, and it's just fun. Okay, we also have again another bit of a mystery happening throughout this because some boys have gone missing and some boys have been murdered, one of them including Frances's brother, and it turns out maybe it's related to what's happening and magic and that kind of thing. So there's a good mystery going on throughout this. There's also incredible representation in this book, which we love to see, and it's just a good fun time. It's lighthearted while also being a little bit heartbreaking. It's coming of age, it's figuring out who you are. It also has a lot of female empowerment in it as well. I mean, it's just great. And I loved the second one too. The second one takes place in Paris. This one takes place in New York. The second one takes place in Paris, and they're just so fun and such a good time, and I love the friendship that is formed in these books. It's incredible, and I just had a blast. So highly recommend if you are looking for a good witch story to read during the autumn time. These ones I don't think will disappoint. Next we have a beloved series. This series is loved by so many people, and for good reason. One, they're novellas, so they are so easy to read. Second, you get kind of a different story while being connected in each one. Let me just explain. It is Every Heart a Doorway series by Shauna McGuire. Shauna McGuire is so good at fantasy. I would highly recommend anything that she writes, really, but this series specifically is so good for people who are just looking to get into fantasy because it's one, very easy to follow, it's cozy and cute while also being a bit dark and disturbing, and there's also a murder mystery that happens throughout at least this one. So these books contain portal fantasy, and what I mean by that is these are about children who have bounced to other worlds or found portals to other worlds, whether that be in the back of a closet or a random door or under a floorboard. And think other worlds like Alice in Wonderland, you know, the underworld, places like that. So these books follow children who have been to these other worlds and are now bounced back and trying to live life in the normal world now, and like, how does one do that? And in this book specifically, we are following Nancy, who has just bounced back from her world, and she gets sent to this school, the School for Wayward Children, where kids learn how to live normal lives again after being in these worlds. And while she's there, something happens and she takes it upon herself to kind of figure out the mystery. And each one of these books follows a character that is connected to this school or that attends this school. So it either happens in their world and is about their origin story, or it happens within the school. You kind of get a different story in each book, and I just love that so much. And there's also like some artwork that happens in these. They're so short. They're just over 100 pages, 150 pages each, and they are just so incredibly done. There's also amazing representation for LGBTQ+ in here as well. I mean, you just have all sorts of characters and people and genders, and it's just incredible, and I love it. I love it. I love it so much. I recommend this to everyone who is like, where should I start with fantasy? I'm like, this one, please. It's short. You will love it. It warms your heart. You will fall in love with these characters, and you'll want to know more about their origin stories, and lucky for you, there's an entire series about each one of their origin stories or their journey through the school, and it's just, I mean, I could boast about it forever. So yeah, I think it's an incredible place to start. And then the last one that I have to talk about, I still have a book hangover from. I do not know what to do with my life. Like, nothing is hitting as much as this series did, and it's not even over yet. I've only read the first 2 because there's only 2 out so far, and I don't know how I'm supposed to wait for the next installment. I believe there's only going to be 3. I do not know, but I am struggling, you guys, and so I have to put it in here. I have to. And that is Legendborn. I mean, it's so incredibly well done. It's so good. This world and these characters, I just need more of it immediately. And I was shocked, okay? No one was more shocked than me that I loved these books as much as I did, because this is a bit of a King Arthur retelling, and I was like, I don't know nothing really about King Arthur. Like, that's not something that I have spent my time researching, learning about. Like, I know the Knights of the Round Table, okay? Like, that's as much as, like, my knowledge goes. So I was like, am I gonna like this? I don't know. But oh my word, was I pleasantly surprised and just shocked by. I love it. So in this book, we are following our main character, Bree, and Bree has recently lost her mom, and the themes of grief throughout these books are so present and so incredibly well done. I have never read books that talk about grief as well and just as relatable as it does in this book. Oh my god, it's so incredible. So Bree has recently lost her mom. She gets an early acceptance into this program at like an early college program, and she goes, and on one of her first nights there, she is at a party and she witnesses an attack that includes magic, and she's like, holy moly, what is happening? What just happened? Who's attacking who? And magic? What? And she is shocked. And then some things start kind of occurring to her, and she starts having these flashbacks, realizing that maybe her mom's death was related to what is happening at the school. So she infiltrates this group to try and figure out what happened with her mom's death, and was it actually an accident or was she murdered? But while she's kind of integrating herself into this group, she also is like full-fledged in it and is going for it, and some other attacks start happening and she starts learning things and picking things up, and that's like such a brief description to what actually happens throughout these books, and it's incredible. I don't know other words to describe it other than like, I'm still not over it. I need more immediately. I feel like everyone can find someone in these books to relate to. The cast of characters is so incredible. There's also a bit of a love story happening in here. We also have Bree's best friend, Alice, who is also in this program, and like Alice, we are Alice stans around here. Alice is incredible, okay? We love her. She is such a good friend, and she's also hilarious. She's amazing. Everyone needs an Alice in their life. And then we also have, again, incredible representation. If there's any theme throughout this list of books, is that there are incredible representation throughout them. Not only does this have a very heavy BIPOC cast and talk of ancestry in this, which is absolutely incredible. There's also a very large discussion about slavery, and I think that is so beyond like impeccably woven throughout this story. Incredible. How many times am I going to say incredible? A lot, okay? It also has amazing LGBTQ plus, wow, I really butchered that, LGBTQ plus characters in this book. We have transgendered characters, we have all sorts of characters, and it's just amazing. I love it. I love when we have well-rounded character representation. It just makes my heart flutter, and this book like will bring you on an adventure. You will laugh, you will cry, you will be on the edge of your freaking seat until the very last chapter, and I highly recommend the audiobook. It's insane. It's so good. It's so good. and I just am obsessed. But I will forewarn you, you will read the first two and be in the same boat as me, and I apologize, okay? Because I know we have to wait. We have to wait until the next one comes out, and like, I'm sorry for making you feel lost on your journey too, but I need some more friends who feel lost like me after reading Bloodmarked. So here we are. We're all gonna suffer together while we wait for the next book, but highly recommend this. It's so incredible. I'm very passionate about it. Can you tell? Please read it. Please, please, please read it. And that concludes my list of 10 fantasy books that you can start with if you are looking to dive more into the fantasy world. Like I said, I really do recommend all of these. I think they all are unique and incredible in their own way. If you are truly not sure where to start or which one to start with, leave a comment below with some books that you love or your reading taste, and I will specifically recommend one to you. But truly, this whole list is incredible, and I could do a part 2 if you're interested, because there are so many good fantasies out there, and also so many that I haven't read. So as I read more, I will have more recommendations for you. So if you do want to see a part 2, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Do not forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to have you here and part of the family. Turn on the bell so you never miss a video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!
With you and I, the future